with no further ado, I will introduce a man who now has been introduced beautifully by Marwan, a tremendous friend and a friend of the Order of Malta. Archbishop Gabriele Caccia is now permanent observer of the Holy See to the United Nations in New York. He's a conventual chaplain, Grand Cross of our order, and he's known to us throughout the world in many of his previous roles, most recently in the Philippines. And I noticed Josie is here with us, representing one of the many in Philippines friends of the Archbishop. And prior to that, for very extended and wonderful service in Lebanon. He will be joined today by our very own ambassador to the United Nations, Dr. Paul Beresford-Hill, who is in New York. Many of you have met him through this medium over the past months, and also Marie-Thérèse, or as some of us know her, Daisy, and since her name says Daisy on her Zoom picture, I'll go with that moniker for today. She is in Geneva, also our permanent observer there at that mission. She is the long-serving ambassador of the order. She's been in her position since 2005 as our ambassador, but since 1995 in the service of the order in our mission there. So with no further ado, I will ask the Archbishop to begin and just share some of his ideas and thoughts as we try to give a little more exposure to the important diplomatic missions for both the Church and our order. Thank you for being with us, Archbishop.
Thank you very much for your kind invitations and words. I'm a little bit scared with all these important people around this meeting. And I would like to start recognizing the presence of your ambassador, Paul. We had the opportunity to be together in some occasion, not many because of COVID, but some important occasions. I greet also the Ambassador Marie-Thérèse, pleased to see you. And I recognize also Ambassador Giuseppe Morabito. We were colleagues in Lebanon. But Your Excellencies, dear brother and knights and dames of the Sovereign Order of Malta, dear friends, it is a joy for me to be with you today as we focus together on how people of faith can contribute within the international community to helping those on the peripheries who are often forgotten and left behind. I will try to be short, and then maybe we can have some exchange and questions. I just want to share with you some small reflection. When we focus on this theme, and particularly on the work of the Holy See and the Sovereign Order of Malta in helping the poor, it is important to note that both the Holy See and the Sovereign Order of Malta are subjects of international law, recognized by the international community. And therefore, as we act, we do not so just as religious entities, even if we are fully motivated by faith. History explains many present situations and provides various challenges that have brought about changes, but the 2,000-year-old presence of the Holy See or the millenarian of the Order of Malta cannot be explained without the concept of living tradition, which is the organic development of what is present essentially from the beginning. If we want to summarize this DNA of each, I would like to make recourse to simple mottos. And I choose for the Holy See the Latin words, libertas ecclesiae, or freedom for the community of believers. And for the Order of Malta, the Latin words, that is also your spirituality, tuitio fidei et obsequium pauperum, that is, preservation or protection of the faith and zealous concern for the poor. Along these lines, we can better understand the development unforeseen at the time of both the Holy See and the Order, and be better able to grasp the historical continuity along the centuries. It is noteworthy, for example, that both were born in Jerusalem and now have their headquarters in Rome. Big change, unforeseen. Coming to today and to where history has brought us, we find ourselves in a more globalized world in which, after dramatic and deadly wars of global dimensions, peoples wanted to end this man-made destruction and wanting an institution designed to prevent the repetition of such devastating experiences. That is why the United Nations was born. As the UN celebrates this year the 75th anniversary of its founding, it has been a good opportunity to examine the contributions of the Holy See and the Order of Malta, and more generally, people of faith, to the organization in the past, present, and future of this institution. When we look at the 4 pillars of the United Nations preamble, peace, human rights, development, and observance of treaties, it is easy to see how central these principles are for the Catholic social teaching, and thus for both the Holy See and the Order. To prevent the scourge of war and to make and build peace are not just accomplished by diplomats and blue helmets, but by so many religious actors on the ground, by helping people to reconcile and by building and capacitating the institutions that make peace possible. People of faith are on the front lines in schools, pulpits, hospitals, refugee camps, and so many other places, putting into practice faith in fundamental human rights and advancing the equal rights of men and women based on the reverence for the dignity of every human person. Believers for centuries have been working to lift the poor out of poverty, to feed the hungry, to protect our planet, in short, to implement what would eventually become the Sustainable Development Agenda, well before the SDGs had ever been formulated. Likewise, religious men and women serve as a conscience for world leaders to establish conditions of justice and to honor the commitments arising from treaties and international law. The implementation of so many of the priorities of the United Nations would simply never have a chance of being accomplished without the contributions of people on the ground, motivated by love of God and of neighbor, or we could say by tuitio fidei and obsequio pauperum. And these indispensable contributions of so many believers working for peace, helping the poor, advancing the rights of women, educating children, tending the sick, rehabilitating and seeking justice for victims, promoting harmony and caring for our common home are all justly praised. In this perspective, there is plenty of space for an indispensable collaboration between the Holy See, the Order, and each independent state, but also within the international family of states like at the UN, as Pope Francis calls for in his encyclica Fratelli Tutti. To finish this simple and brief presentation, I would like to recall an essential contribution that people of faith can give to the world today. It's by helping them not to forget God. It's a temptation in modern secularist situations to live as if God did not exist. But when we forget God, it is easy to forget our humanity. That's why one of the most important services believers are called to give, beyond our hard work for peace, human rights, integral development, and justice, is to pray and show the world that we believe in God, who acts in history. Sometimes we become indistinguishable from not religiously inspired peacemakers, social workers, teachers, or medical personnel. And that is a huge loss. Notwithstanding of all the other good we strive to do, prayer is perhaps our most important contribution because of what God gives in response to prayer and because of how, through our good deeds, people come to acknowledge, believe in, and glorify the God who inspired us. This is especially important at the beginning of this Advent season. In conclusion, we live in a world in which many continue to be forgotten. Religious believers, and especially the work of states like the Holy See and the Sovereign Order of Malta, must not only be the world's memory, but its eyes in looking for them, its feet in running toward them, its ears in listening to them, its hands in lifting them up and caring for them, and its heart in loving them as they deserve and God desires. Thank you for all the work you do in this way for those left behind.
Thank you so much for those beautiful words, Archbishop. They feel more like a prayer than a talk for us. And I think as we join together at the beginning of Advent, and I listen to your words, and I look at the faces who've joined us today, and so many of the people that I see the face of on the screen right now are those that have always taught the lesson that you speak of. They are those who pray constantly as they work and as they worship. And so many old friends are gathered here listening to your words. And I'm so grateful. We'll turn to Daisy now for the perspective from Geneva, and then I really offer you the time, all those of you who've joined us today, to ask questions and to engage with these special guests. So Daisy, with no further introduction, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. Lisa, can you hear me? Yes? Okay. I would like to, first of all, greet all the distinguished guests, your distinguished guests today. Naturally, Archbishop Caccia, the new nuncio in New York. I wish you well in your very, very important mission, and I hope we will have the chance to work together as well. I also wish to greet my colleague, Paul, whom I have not yet met, in spite of the fact that we are working closely together already. But across the Atlantic, we seem to manage, although we cannot travel for the moment, but I hope we will be able to soon. Marwan, wonderful to see you. I was so impressed by your own presentation in the series of conferences that Lisa organizes. Lovely to see Philippa Leslie, an old friend, and so many other friends. I greet you very warmly from Geneva. Let me start by introducing you to what is called International Geneva, because that is the framework in which we operate. And it is a unique platform for the Order of Malta to engage actively in international affairs. Considered the global hub of human rights and humanitarian affairs, International Geneva comprises the United Nations, 40 international organizations, and some 750 registered international and national NGOs. Bringing together thousands of delegations, it is the biggest center for multilateral diplomacy and one of the foremost centers of global governance in the world. The main organizations with which the Order cooperates in the field around the world have their headquarters here. And this is foremost, of course, the humanitarian field. We develop relations with international and intergovernmental humanitarian organizations to inform them about the Order's worldwide activities and to define possible fields of cooperation. In this sense, in this context, our work focuses, of course, on the United Nations itself, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. Then we have the International Organization for Migration. The Order signed a cooperation agreement with IOM in 2007, and we cooperate in the areas of medical, social, and emergency assistance to persons involved in migration. Then the very important and much in the limelight at the moment, World Health Organization. The Order has a long-standing cooperation with WHO, and Malteser International is a partner of the Global Health Cluster. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs is particularly important to follow in for developments during crisis situations. Then we have the United Nations Human Rights Council, which it takes up a lot of our time because there are enormous amount of meetings and sessions. And although it is also somewhat politicized, we focus on thematic issues that are of interest to the Order. For example, freedom of religion or belief, extreme poverty, trafficking in persons, right to water and sanitation, right to health and food, rights of persons with disabilities, of migrants, refugees and IDPs, and of older persons. An important element in the work of the Human Rights Council are the side events during the plenary sessions, which elaborate on the topics that are being debated by the Council. Now, in all this, it's very important to engage in cooperation with other permanent missions and institutions. As the Order does not belong to one of the United Nations regional groups, it is particularly important for us to reach out and join other structures. These include the Geneva Center for Human Rights Advancement and Global Dialogue, where we are regular panelists in discussions on Islam and Christianity. We have also joined the informal working group of permanent observers, which includes the European Union, the African Union, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the League of Arab States, and the Council of Europe. Furthermore, we are a member of several groups of friends established by permanent missions on thematic issues, such as water and peace, or the rights of persons with disabilities. Our cooperation with the Holy See Mission is very close. We co-founded with the former Nuncio, Archbishop and now Cardinal Silvano Tomasi, the Caritas in Veritate Foundation. Its aim is to make the positions of the Catholic Church more understandable and visible, thus increasing their impact on the elaboration of international culture and law. This brings me to the religious and interreligious aspect of our activities. We are witnessing the gaining of strength and visibility of faith and religious actors. Today, it is generally recognized that they are a crucial part of the international humanitarian architecture. They are often trusted first responders and long-term community partners in crisis situations. Cooperation in the humanitarian field between religion-based organizations is an essential element to peace building and reconciliation efforts, such as, for example, the Order of Malta's close cooperation in Lebanon with different Christian and Islamic communities, or our reconstruction projects in Iraq with Kurdish partners. It is, however, interesting to recall that this has been fairly long in coming. 3 decisive steps taken within the United Nations no doubt influenced this evolution. First, in September 2000, then United Nations Secretary General Kofi Annan hosted a Millennium Peace Summit with 1,000 religious leaders. This was the largest gathering of religious leaders inside the United Nations since its founding. In 2010, the United Nations Interagency Task Force on Religion and Sustainable Development began its work, which it continues today. In 2012, then High Commissioner for Refugees and now United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres organized a dialogue on the theme Faith and Protection, which was attended by some 400 personalities, including religious leaders and representatives of FBOs. They discussed the important role of FBOs and local religious communities in protecting asylum seekers, refugees, IDPs, and stateless persons. Thanks to this evolution, we are increasingly able to integrate the religious component into our multilateral humanitarian diplomacy. For example, in 2015, the Order organized with the United Nations at the Palais des Nations in Geneva a symposium on the topic Religions Together for Humanitarian Action, reaching out to victims of armed conflicts, the special role of faith-based actors. It was a preparatory event to the 2016 World Humanitarian Summit in Istanbul, where 9,000 delegates covered all aspects of humanitarian action. The Grand Chancellor addressed both the plenary and the summit's special session on religious engagement. Its outcome was the adoption of the Charter for Faith-Based Humanitarian Action. A more recent example of the Order's possibility to influence the debate on the role of FBOs was its active participation in Geneva and New York in the consultations leading up to the adoption by the United Nations General Assembly of the 2 global compacts on refugees and for safe, orderly, and regular migration in 2018. As I mentioned at the outset, in particular, the right to freedom of religion or belief is very much at the center of attention. This implies global interreligious and interfaith dialogue with multi-religious actors. We are frequently called upon to participate actively in such gatherings. For example, the annual interfaith dialogue organized by the Mission of Jordan and UNITA, or the annual Geneva Peace Week, during which we organize specific events. At the World Council of Churches, I was invited to speak on the theme Diplomacy and Peace Building during a conference on promoting peace together. As partnerships are most important to our work, allow me to mention 2 other organizations that have recently become of great interest to the Order. First, the International Religious Freedom or Belief Alliance, launched in February of this year by the United States Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and 26 other member states. The Alliance strives to promote freedom of religion or belief for all. To this date, it has grown to 32 members, 2 observers, 5 friends, and more than 25 religious experts. I'm happy to report that the Order has just joined as an observer and that the Grand Chancellor has already participated in 2 ministerial meetings that were held a fortnight ago. The second is Religions for Peace International. It is the largest global movement representing a religious and multi-stakeholder coalition committed to promoting peace and development. Their members are religious leaders from all over the world. I was invited to join Religions for Peace as one of their many honorary presidents, which enables me to participate in their numerous activities. I would just also, in concluding, like to mention that, of course, communication is an important aspect of our work. Apart from the mission's website, we cover all our events on social media. We are often called upon to write articles, to make speeches, and we are about to open our own YouTube channel. And I would also like to say in concluding that all this can only be done with a very dedicated team. And there I would like to say that my 2 deputies, Professor Michel Beutet, who is also the Order's ambassador to combat human trafficking, and Jean-François Camer, a former Swiss ambassador, are of great assistance and are fully motivated and engaged along my side, together with our young attaches and interns. So I am most grateful to all those who help in keeping our mission on the top of the work, which is sometimes very important and very sort of takes up a lot of time. And I'm also most grateful that we are able to serve the order. It's an honor and a privilege to serve the order in its diplomatic service. Thank you very much, Lisa, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Daisy. As ever, I think you give us a picture of the transformation that's taken place over the last decade or two in terms of religious actors in humanitarian fields and in particular areas of crisis. And the professionalism you bring to it is tremendous, and we're very, very grateful to you for that. I must follow you in thanking your team and your staff. I don't think we would have gotten this far with this discussion were it not for Father Roger Landry, who's been a great partner to both Paul and I, and so ably assists the mission of the Holy See. So we owe him a huge debt of gratitude, and I hope he's listening. I see his photo, but not his live page. There he is. So thank you. We hope you will join the Archbishop in participating after we hear from our final speaker. Paul Beresford-Hill is a very special friend of the Global Fund for Forgotten People. It is a great honor for me to present him to so many of my old friends. And I don't know, Paul, if you've noticed since we've come on, you have not only current members of our Sovereign Council, but a very esteemed former member, Gianluca Chiavri, is with us, as well as our new head of Malteser International, and Winfried Henkel, who currently serves on the Sovereign Council. Many of them have not had the pleasure and privilege, as I have, to meet you. And I must say that even taking up your post just months before the pandemic began, you've launched such an active mission, and I look forward to hearing from you today to give us a little understanding of what is happening there in New York.
Thank you very much indeed. Can you hear me? Yes?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good, thank you. This has been something for me of a baptism of fire in that when I began my work at the United Nations, it was a very wonderful summer leading up to a General Assembly, which was my inaugural General Assembly, and it was for me one of the steepest learning curves that I have ever experienced in my life. But it was one also of the most enjoyable and exciting, and to have the opportunity of representing the Order of Malta within the community of nations at the United Nations was and is truly memorable and humbling. You know, as I sit now, not so often because of the shutdown and lockdown and the restrictions on the use of the General Assembly facilities, but when I do go to the General Assembly Hall, and when I've had the opportunity to sit in the Security Council chamber and listen to the debates and the discussions about the world order, I'm reminded of the words of Jesus quoted by Mark in the Gospels, where Jesus says, "For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be earthquakes in many places, and there will be famines and troubles, and there shall be a cause of great sorrows." And listening to those prophetic words, I'm reminded of how real those words are in every age and every day and in every time. And we at the Order of Malta have a 900-year tradition of trying to alleviate some of those famines and some of those troubles, and to be a source of healing. The Sovereign Order of Malta, we are a voice. We're a voice for the poor, we're a voice for the sick, and as Archbishop Caccia has noted, we are a voice for the forgotten. We're a voice for the inconvenient detritus of humanity, the unwanted migrants, the abandoned refugees, the children without homes, without nourishment, and without love. When I make an intervention at the UN, whether it be at the third committee meetings on human rights, which have been going on this autumn very, very regularly and very, very thoroughly, and when I listen to the special rapporteurs giving their reviews of human rights and issues around the world, and I have an opportunity to speak, whether I'm commenting on the plight of the Rohingya in Burma or the Uyghurs in China, I always make a point of stating that as an ambassador without the trappings of a state, my concern is with a different citizenry. We represent those who are left behind. And that's a mantra which has been echoed throughout this conversation this morning, firstly by Archbishop Caccia, then by Lisa. And in the context of the work that Daisy does, those are the people that she represents in Geneva. The UN, particularly in a push to implement this properly and wisely, continually reminds its member states that they must not leave anyone behind in the quest for a better and more sustainable world. We, at the Order of Malta and at the Holy See, represent the voice of conscience, sometimes a cry of conscience, as we have no political axe to grind. When we speak without any territory to defend or to expand. We have no special interests lurking behind the good intentions that our governments may ask us to reiterate and to repeat in a public forum. No. Our role is to make sure that even when it is inconvenient, those who are shoved to the sidelines and into oblivion, who need a voice, who need to have revealed to everyone their famines, their troubles, and their great sorrows. These are the things which of Christian right should be ours too. And that's why the Order of Malta and the Holy See speak with a voice at the United Nations. But it's not necessarily our voice. It's the voice of those brothers and sisters of ours who cannot speak for their own. Thank you.
Well, it's an amazing thing how from each of our perspectives, I think we all are, have this shared experience and a shared understanding of the power of our faith and the power that the Order of Malta has in living its mission and in addressing ourselves fully to our lords, the sick and the poor. Amongst those that have joined us, there are a number of current and former ambassadors to the order. And I very much invite you to this conversation. I think that those that are seated with a multilateral role are really helped and influenced and inspired by the work on the ground in various countries that in some cases they're very welcomed, in others there is less of an understanding of the role of the nuncio or the role of an ambassador of the order. And I invite you to contribute your comments and conversation. I'm looking at Peter Murphy, who served very ably for very many years, as well as Bob and Ellen Schaefer, who I see have joined us, who so ably served at the United Nations in New York before you. So I won't take too much time. I will open the floor for discussion, and I have some questions of my own if everyone is not ready or shy to begin.
Lisa, if I might begin, Peter Murphy, a former American diplomat and the first ambassador of the order here in the Principality of Monaco. I just want to make one statement and to tell you that I have one wish and one prayer, and that is that the new U.S. administration will once again take up the cause of the forgotten people, for the refugees and orphans and the people who, as we have mentioned before, are on the sidelines of humanity. I think that this new beginning will be a great boon to all of us, and especially to the poor and the sick. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. I think that all of us coming through this year, this highly unusual year, have had a chance to reset and rebalance, and there is a lot of change that will be taking place in the United States and in the world, and in our order. We have, a great year ahead, and I'd be interested in Archbishop Caccia's comments about some of the priorities that we're seeing emerge and how we can work best together. I think that I certainly was inspired by the last encyclical of the Holy Father in thinking of what's ahead for all of us.
Yes, there are plenty of common ground and plenty of occasions to work together, since we share the same roots. And even if with different perspective, we are in the same mission. And especially, I think that what the Ambassador Paul just said about the order, since he has not a state, even if is recognized as an international personnel of international law, like the Holy See that has a symbolic state, it's clear to everyone that our interests are not the interests of a country, of a nation, are not of economic, military, or other kind of interests. So this perspective make our voices be listening with a positive attitude, recognizing that, as the ambassador well said, that we are talking about those who mainly have no voices. And in that sense, there are many possibilities of working together. One, just to stay at the recent time, we had the kind of meeting virtual about the World Day of the Poor. I know the order is implementing worldwide this initiative wanted by the Holy Father. It will take time, but that changes approach, changes mentality. When we put somebody who is not considered at the center, we find new solutions. I was talking to the priest one day that, for instance, if you want to go to church and you are in good health, you can make this big steps going to this wonderful high level. But if you are on your wheelchair, you would find very difficult to access. And if we start thinking ideas, organization, places from the point of view of those who have more problem, we find solutions that are good for everyone, for those who can walk, for those who cannot. So this is an idea, but for instance, I was thinking at the many interactions of the order on the ground, like the church. We are not just at the headquarters talking about something that we don't experience. We have presence on the ground that make us here understand what we are talking about, but also make our words have another impact because we are there. Recently, I was told by one of the commissioners at the United Nations, many times the church, religious organizations are the real first responded to all kinds of calamities because they are already there. By the time the organization starts moving, those are already there and they are already working. So there is also a reciprocity. Other people understand that there is space for collaboration, integration, because we have a common goal.
Exactly. I think that's a perfect introduction for our new Secretary General of the Malteser International. I know Clemens is here with us, as well as many colleagues from Lebanon that have been working together in this way for years. I invite you, Clemens, to extend the comments of the Archbishop.
Thank you very much, Lisa, and dear distinguished guest. I think I have not really something to add, but to express my pure joy and pleasure, specifically to see Your Excellency Archbishop Gabriele Caccia, a true friend and a true fighter, which we experience so often in the field, in the battlefields of Beirut. And here I'm of course referring to our services to the poor and the sick, in a situation where you can really learn and love our mission. I think it's the best school of the world to experience what we need to do to endeavor in this work, in this field. Thank you, Lisa, for letting me the floor. I present myself as the new General Secretary of Malteser International. I'm sitting on this chair now since 4 weeks, and there is a lot of work to do. I have to also give credits to my predecessor, Ingo Radke, who really handed me over a very well-oiled machine with many impacts and many and a turnover of close to $100 million per year. Of course, there are always things and low-hanging fruits where we can have a little bit more of impact, a little bit more of understanding, a little bit more of exchange, and I'm willing and happy and looking forward for a very close collaboration, specifically with this format, with the Global Fund for Forgotten People, with our government in Rome, with our distinguished diplomatic corps, and of course, with Mother Church, you know, shoulder by shoulder, heart by heart, but at the end counts what the Vatican says, of course. And here we also want to really do our first strong endeavors, my strong endeavors in Lebanon and the region of the Middle East. But also my eyes are looking to our projects in Africa, in Asia, in Middle East I refer to, and in South America. And we also, I reached out to the Federal Association of the United States, and it resulted that many of the items of the order just mentioned, including the diplomatic corps, is not really aware how the business model of MI is working. And I think this would be step number one, to explain what we do, how we do it, and what the purpose of our service is. At the end of the day, I can ensure you it is high quality work, but we are bound to restricted funds. So we receive a lot of money which goes in and out of the door. And it has been according to our donors, which is mainly the German government and also the European government, to implement and to help the poor and the sick and the frontline. But I will use every opportunity to reach out to you one by one on request or in meetings, so that we can have a deeper look how we can sharpen this tool to better serve the purpose of our order and to better help the poor and the sick in the first place. Thank you again, Lisa, for you reaching out, and whenever traveling allows, I'll be very happy to see you, because it mostly goes along with good food and better talks. So my suggestion for the Global Fund of Forgotten People, that you know, before you set up a meeting like this, you might want to send around a bottle of white wine, so that we can have a little bit more of tastings of the different regions of the world.
Excellent. Thank you, Clemens. We have, I know, Ambassador Giuseppe Marabito and the Schaeffers want to get in now. Thank you very much, Ambassador. Why don't you, Marabito first, and then the Schaeffers.
Thank you, Lisa. First of all, I would like to say hello to Monsieur Caccia, who has been my great mentor in Beirut, where I spent almost 5 years of my career as Italian ambassador. I have a question for Archbishop Caccia. Maybe it's a different one, I don't know, or a stupid question, but I wonder if faith-based principles inform international diplomacy more now in comparison, for instance, 40 or 50 years ago, before the so-called end of history. Although we live now in a more civilized world, I think that, but I would like to have the opinion of Archbishop Caccia, I think that faith-based principles play a major role today. Thank you.
Thank you for your kind words. I think we see two different big things going on. On one hand, we recognize that 85% of the world population believes in God, in a creator, belongs to kind of religion. That is a fact. And the United Nations, who started as organization of states, we are talking about member states, little by little, they rediscover the very first words of the charter: we, the peoples of the United Nations. So it's not just the states, but the states that represent the people. That's why they've opened in these last years to more and more participation from the ground, to NGOs, to different bodies, which means that they recognize that the state is an actor, fundamental, but is not the only actor. And the role of religion has been recognized on one hand, everywhere. And on the other hand, you have this kind of counter situation in which sometimes, especially some modern or more advanced states, they are pushing religion back to the private sector. Freedom of religion means you can pray, okay, in your little or big house, temple, church, mosque, there, but not interfere with other affairs. So on one hand, there is the need of the people engaged, but there is a kind of also sometimes a rejection, if not in words, in acts. And I feel sometimes also that if you are allowed to be part of the bigger family, you have to stay under the condition of this bigger family. And that's why we are always looking for the freedom of religion. So we are not just an agency of a state, of an agency of the organizations. We are collaborating with everyone, but with our own identity. And we believe that our own identity can create the conditions for better work together. For instance, two big representatives, the Pope and the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, which makes alone, globally, 1/3 or 1/4 of the people of the world, they met together, they signed a document about human fraternity. That's our preconditions essential to the implementation of the on-the-ground activity of peacekeeper and so on. There is not just money that moves the world, but there are ideas, there are beliefs. And so this is very important. On one hand, the world recognizes this. On the other hand, sometimes we see that they try to control. And so we have to be in this in-between with a spirit of collaboration, but also with the spirit of freedom. And that's why freedom of religion is one of the key points if we want to build really a positive and open society.
Thank you. That's why we're here together. And it's just, it's so gratifying to have such a wonderful question and such an important answer. Now I'll ask the Schaeffers for a question.
Yes, let me make just a little statement. I was the ambassador UN for 11 years, and I'm so happy about my successor. Let me also say that it's sort of like Blanche Dubois in the streetcar named Desire. We often have to rely on the kindness of strangers. Not quite a stranger, the Austrian ambassador, when Austria was president of the Security Council, said that you have such an important role in the protection of civilians in times of conflict. For now, the death toll will be 90% civilian and 10% military insurrections. And he allowed the Grand Chancellor, our wonderful Grand Chancellor, Albrecht von Boeselager, to testify for the first time. Any member of the Order of Malta had testified before the Security Council with Sir John Holmes, representing the UN at that time. And Albrecht von Boeselager was the only one who had field experience. It was a very historic occasion. I also wish to say that I'm not there. I miss you all deeply. I just met the nuncio as he was coming and knew immediately how successful he would be. And Daisy will always remain a dear friend. And it's through this network, though, through this network that we are so strong, and people offering help. For example, another issue, I won't remember the issue, but it was an African ambassador of enormous importance. He could carry the whole vote, literally, of the African Union. And why did he know us so well? Because we had a leprosarium there. And the major health organization, criticized it, but about 15 years ago said leprosy would soon go the way of smallpox. It didn't. We are the major player in that field. And suddenly, from our kind works in the past, the kindness of strangers, they often remember and respond to us at the most important occasion. And all of this is really under God and helping as we are told to when we join this order, to help the poor and the sick. They are our only friends in kindness in many ways. Thank you. And thank you for the Global Fund for Forgotten People. The name itself says everything, and I was privileged to be its secretary for a while.
Thank you so much, Bob. You are so many that are on the call today were, I think, amongst the very first and important patrons. And like the rest of the order, we function in this network. And for me, what I think has been so beautifully articulated by Archbishop Caccia and Paul and Daisy is the trust we enjoy. And I believe that there is a transformation going on with respect to where religious actors are allowed to function and solve problems. And I think that is always just down to the individual effort, the trust they have in a community or in a location. And I think we're so fortunate to have so many examples of people working on the ground so effectively, where our reputation and the way we work is understood more and more. It's with that huge gift those who've come before us have given us, but a tremendous responsibility for those who are on the field. So as ever, I thank you very much for the time that you're taking to be part of this ongoing conversation. I invite you to continue to be part. If I've missed everyone on this, I think Daisy may have had her hand up. I will give Daisy the last word, but I will just leave you with great thanks, and then I will ask the Archbishop to say a prayer in closing for us this evening. Thank you. Daisy, you're on mute. Daisy?
Activate, voila. Is that all right now? Okay, yes. No, I just wanted to say a great thank you to the Archbishop and to Paul as well. I think that in reply to a question concerning the change that has come about in our role as a faith-based, as a religious institution, it has been huge. I've been following this for the last, I would say, 20 years. Doesn't make me any younger, but that doesn't matter. And I can tell you that when I joined the United Nations, the word religion did not actually exist practically. When I was a young international civil servant at UNHCR, the United Nations thought it was above all that. And we never had any discussions on religion. And today we spend, I don't know, a lot of our time discussing these very important issues. And I think also that what we can say after today's discussion is what we saw clearly is that religion and diplomacy can complement each other by working towards the same goals, but with different means, of course. And I think that is extremely, extremely important. And as the Archbishop said, over 85% of the world's population identifies with a religion or a belief. And therefore, religion has become a central topic in today's policy agenda. And policy makers are no longer able to get around religion's role in conflict and peace. I think this development is extremely important for us, for the Order of Malta, because we are engaged in so many conflict areas in the world. And this, of course, helps us because we can work with everybody. As Paul said, we are neutral, non-political, we can work with everybody. So thank you again, Lisa, for having a lot of people in the Order don't understand what we are doing. They regard the Order's diplomatic service as some strange animal. And I think it's important that we sometimes do explain what we are actually doing and how we are serving the Order. So thank you very much for organizing this, and I'd like to thank all your distinguished guests as well. Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you, Daisy. Thank you, Daisy. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Archbishop. It has been a great pleasure and a great conversation this evening. Please, everyone, stay in touch and stay tuned for the next in the series. And with that, I'll ask the Archbishop to say goodbye to us with a prayer. Thank you.